Man, I need to adjust that. Howdy, neighbors. It's Sako and the Moon, Season 3. Sorry, I'm here. Boop. And so are these other people. Normally I do a introduction to the show and stuff, but I'll leave that to my co-host.
It's Season 3. They should know by now. They should know who we are. This is Sako. I'm the Moon. She is published 3 times over. I've been published once. We're independent. We wear all the hats. Welcome to the show.
Awesome.
There's the condensed version of the show. Right.
Very
there.
condensed. I like
Like
it.
normally, now here's how this normally works. Sako normally has like this long, drawn out, scripted thing that she rattles on, and then I announce myself as the doer of things. Because that's essentially what independent writers are. We're all just doers of things. All the things that need to be done, we're the ones who do it, which is why we wear the Omni hat, because we do everything as independents. And that's, of course, the drive of this show. So I don't know how to introduce Season 3. I do. Yes, I do. We're going to be doing a lot more interviews for Season 3 because I think that after a while you get tired of hearing me talk. I mean, Sako's pretty cool. You'll get tired of hearing me talk all the time. So we decided that for Season 3, we're going to bring in a bunch of other people so you can get a perspective of the independent author world from more than just us. Because there are more than just us in the world. I know we're the coolest, and like you should focus on us right here. Right there. But there are other people, I guess, and you can learn a lot more from the experience of everybody else besides just us. Today, it's going to be one of those things because when you find the other writers in your circle, in your field, in your genre, horror, because we're the best, one of the things that might come up in conversation is working together on a project. There's going to be some highs and lows, some valleys, some pros and cons, and things of that nature. And I've never actually had to do that. These 2 people have. And I will give them space to introduce themselves as we discuss collaborations on this episode. So, take it away. Sako, BC.
That was quite the introduction, Moon. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You know.
Yeah. So I am, of course, a longtime listener, watcher, of you and Sako and everything. So, but it's for my first time on here. So for those who don't know me, my name is BC Brown. You can find me most places online, BC Brown Books. I am an hybrid published author with more than 6 titles to my name. By hybrid published, I mean that I am both indie published, meaning I'm self-published, I wear all the hats, and I am also through a couple of very small imprints, very small presses that are mostly collaborative effects that I've done with other authors. However, Sako is my first co-writing versus writing for, like, say, an anthology. I've published Oh, go ahead.
Go.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I've been published since 2007. That's when my first book came out. And I've done everything wrong from the very beginning that I had to figure out how to get right in the indie world. So
that is the indie world in short, like learning to do everything right after screwing it up the first time.
Pretty much. There are some awesome resources that are out there that I wish I would have known out in advance, but now I try to talk as much about my experiences and my bads that I've gone through in the indie world, as well as what I've learned along the way. Plus, I have had a career in marketing and branding and communications, so I try to bring that to the indie world as much as possible too. That's me, nutshell.
And that's what this show is all about. The whole point of us doing Sako and the Moon has to be that resource where we can screw stuff up and then other people can learn from our mistakes so that they don't have to. That's essentially what we're doing. And I'll be asking you some questions about the difference between your indie experience and your trad experience as the interview conducts. Before that, I don't know who I'm introducing now. Am I introducing Sako to me? Am I introducing Cass Voit? Tell me what's up.
Howdy, neighbors. I'm Sako Toomey, also known as Cass Voit. I write horror, and I'm a witch, and I'm a graphic designer, and sometimes I combine those three things. I have been writing, and I am self-published since 2000, and have been writing with BC
since 2020.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, you and I have to do that every time. Both of us like pause for a second and go, "What? When did we start this?
When did we start?"
Yeah.
So and we also the co-host of this podcast. So like this is not just a me show, but today it kind of is. Moon's kind of taken over. I'm going to be interviewing them as they are collaboration partners and such. So this is going to be fun because I don't know, BC, if you've paid attention, but I don't plan things.
You're a little more off the cuff.
I'm very
Sako
off
can
the
be
cuff.
Sako can be very off the cuff. She's just not for this usually. Because I
Not
watch a bunch.
Usually.
Yeah, no. I watch a bunch of all the different things that Sako's on because I can't, I work during the standard Eastern time zone, like hours that most writers do streams. So I tend to just, and that's, Sako has more time during the day that she can do stuff, and I'm more like super early in the morning or super late at night kind of a thing.
Right.
So I tend to watch everything she's on. And she's good. I love it. She's like controlled chaos sometimes. It's fun chaos. But for the moon, she's much more structured. For Sako,
she is, and she kind of has to be. She kind of has to be structured because
someone
I'm
has
totally off the cuff. Like there are times I'll admit where I don't know what the subject is of the episode until we're about to start. Like I learn it about.
That's on my bad.
Before she hits play, and I'm like, "Oh, we're covering what topic? Okay, I can handle that." And we just kind of go with it. And she's got her notes, and I fill in the blanks. And I say all that because that's how this interview is going to go.
It's totally cool with me. I am I'm unadulterated squirrel mode at all times, between the ADHD and the complex PTSD, and apparently now I'm being told I might be on the spectrum. That's a much later, and it does make some sense.
Amount of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it does make some amount of sense. And I'm like, some things are clicking here as to what I need, but what I don't need, kind of a thing. Anyway, so yeah, she's often very structured in our streams as well, or she kind of guides things. Whereas if I'm on my own, I'm pretty structured. Like I have an agenda and a thing. Otherwise, it would be an amazing. It would just be an amazing stream of conscious stream. But when I'm on with her, she kind of keeps us in check.
Yeah, my wrestling podcast is a lot more structured than Sako and the Moon, but this is a lot more fun because I don't have to be structured because I have Sako. But I do want to start with you because we are familiar with Sako. This is her show, her and I show. So our watchers are familiar with her. And like you said, it's your first time here. So what genres do you typically lean towards in your writing?
So, well, that's a really good question, actually, because I've started questioning my genres over the last few weeks, but not anything crazy. I've always considered myself a urban fantasy writer. Paranormal mysteries are my game. Basically, I tell people I write psychics and serial killers or magic and murder. That
sounds like branding 101 right there.
It is. Pretty much. I'm all about the alliteration. Man, love me some alliteration.
I look forward to the t-shirts.
Yeah. So I actually have some designs. Thank you for asking. They're not out there yet. Don't nobody ask about that. I am
2XL. 2XL. Thank you.
okay. Good to know. I like 2XL because I like to wear a little bigger, a little flowier, and like to be able to do things with it.
I'm just
So,
fat.
but yeah. So I started my publishing career whew, originally with like epic dark fantasy. That was where I was going with it, kind of like political dark fantasy.
Gotcha.
And then I didn't anticipate like not doing that genre. That's what I really thought my niche was, and that was kind of my jam. But then a really good friend of mine back in about 2003 or so, she got into a pretty terrible car accident, and she was like laid up for the longest time. And I would just go over. She was at the point where, and you got to remember this was 2003, so think early tech. We didn't have e-readers and all sorts of stuff like that, and like you didn't have the smartphone that you could really use for
Yeah.
anything
Yeah, you were
unless you had
hitting 5 like 3 times over to get a
yeah,
letter.
you were still T9ing it in order to text, and like emojis were still literally just like a semicolon parenthesis for a winky face, kind of a thing. So
Right.
um she got into a pretty bad car accident at the time, and at night she didn't have anybody to like kind of come over. She'd be awake off and on through the painkillers and stuff, and just with the pain. So I told her, I said, "Hey, I'll come over at night because I worked nights, so like overnight." I said, "I'll come
Right.
over overnight and then spend some time with you and be there for you." And she's like, "Mostly, I just like." She's like, "What I miss is being able to read." She wasn't a big. She liked TV and movies, but she wasn't a big like watching TV, watching movies kind of a thing. She's like, "I like to read and I can't do it right now. I can't lift my arms. I can't look down. I can't, she's like, you can only like roll your eyes so far down or so far up or so far to the
Right.
side in order to be able to do things." She's like, "And I can't hold a book." So I was like, "Well, I'll just come over and read to you if that's cool." And she's like, "Yeah, that's fine." She's like, "I love urban fantasy." Which at the time I had been reading quite a bit of urban fantasy. I was kind of going through that um, phase of my readership life.
Right.
And I was like, "That's cool. So no problem." So we're talking like, it was like the Anita Blake series by Laurel K. Hamilton and things like that was what I was reading to her. So I kind of started to get into that mindset. And the more I spent time with her, the more I kind of got to know her better. Like we got a lot closer. She was
Naturally.
bed down for quite a while. Yeah. Um, and she was telling me stories about her life and growing up. She's like she's an immigrant's child. She's first generation, like American Nigerian born here. So she was telling me about her life growing up, single mom, single Nigerian immigrant mom, in the 70s, raising her. And I just really like loved her life basically and like getting to know her better. So I had talked with her. I was like, I got an idea for a story while we were reading all this stuff. I'd like to make you the main character if it's cool with you. She's like, "Yeah." She's like, "I've never." She's like, "That's cool. Nobody's ever asked me." She's like, "Is it going to be like your first book?" Which I have a great indie horror story about my first book and publishing it.
We'll probably get into
But
that.
yeah, but I was like, "No, it's not." I said, "It's actually like kind of more urban fantasy." I said, "I'm kind of considering it like a paranormal murder mystery because it's about a woman who is a psychometrist. So she's she's a psychic who touches something and sees the past, or
Gotcha.
she touches a person and can kind of rifle through their um, memories, basically. But it comes with all of the emotional baggage of everything that was felt, seen, smelled, heard, everything. So it's kind of like fucked up her life. it's it's got some negatives to it.
I can
And
see
she's
where
like,
that could
"Wow,
be tricky. Yeah.
yeah." She's like, "Yeah." She's like, "I never thought you would write anything that was more, like earth-based contemporary." And I was like, "Well, short stories I've done over the years, but never really anything long." And she's like, "Cool." So we just kind of I just collaborated with her on it as she was basically my sensitivity reader just to make sure I got her correct. I got Nigerian culture correct. I got her, her Black heritage as an American, as African American, first immigrant, non from an immigrant mother. I swear I type better than I speak most days. I do. Anyway, so she did, I collaborated with her, but didn't co-write anything. She was just a reader for me and made sure I got it
Right.
correct to her. She's like, it's correct to me in my life.
That's still an important role, especially when you're writing from an angle that you're not personally familiar with.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to do. In when I started writing the series in 2003, having predominant writers of color, Black writers and writers of color, there just weren't a lot, and there weren't a lot
Yeah.
of main characters either. And I was like, I was like, I don't want to take the place of somebody that would write this, but she wasn't going to write like herself as a main character. And I was like,
Right.
I was like, you'll perfectly fit in my story because basically I came up with a story based on all of you spending time with you. So it was just a lot of fun, and Abby has become one of my favorite characters to write. Like, I have a hard time not writing Abby as a main character. Unfortunately, my friend, she didn't make it through the pandemic, and it was a little rough. But so I've kind of switched away from. I don't want to stray from her as a main character. I think I could continue to write Abby faithfully. I have enough stories and notes and everything from my friend over the years, but I will probably kind of keep that as an in memoriam kind of thing, and then expand. Yeah, and then expand out the series a little bit more with folks that I do know, and just continue on highlighting areas that I think are important to highlight in, especially with social justice and activism, because that's what I like to highlight in every book is one of my main themes.
Yeah. So that was kind of like your first real collaboratory experience, it seems. Sako, what was your first collaboratory experience?
I'm an avid role player, so collaborative storytelling is kind of my jam. I played my first RPG when I was 7, and I never stopped.
Gotcha.
So
something that Sako and I share: childhood RPG and game mastering.
Right. So I'm used to picking a viewpoint or a setting or whatever, and other people would do the same, and they would impact the story in some manner.
Gotcha.
And as a GM, I was basically God, right? I was the author, and I would give them the playground and kind of give them a motive and let them play.
I would have to bring up wrestling at least once, and wrestling is kind of collaborative storytelling because you have one character with a background, another character with a background existing in a field, and they kind of have to make the stories work together some way, shape, or form. Because I have to mention that everything comes back to wrestling, at least somewhat. But I'm so little of the focus of this episode, so I had to sneak it in when I could.
I think my first collaborative writing thing was in either middle school or high school, and we did what was considered a chain story.
Explain that. So, for in case anyone's not familiar with the terminology.
So, back in the 80s and 90s, chain stories were someone would start writing a thing, and then you would pass it to someone else, and they would write the next section, and they would pass it to someone else, and they would write the next section. And so that was kind of my first foray into collaborative storytelling regarding like novels and writing and short stories and stuff like that.
So I assume that that's very similar to what you two are doing. You two did for the first project that you had y'all work together. What was that project called?
Rambo.
Yeah,
Is
it
it
was
available?
it is available. It's available on Amazon. You can find it under Sako's pen name, which is Cass Voit, and that's V as in Victor, O-I-T, because people ask me all the time. They're like, we got the Cass part, we think, but they're
Yeah.
like, Voit. That could be spelled a bunch of different ways. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's yeah, very similar to kind of what Sako and I are doing. So, Sako, do you mind if I go over the how we got started on this?
I don't mind. Go right
Okay,
ahead.
cool. Just checking. I tend to be a chatterbox, and I can talk over people and like steal their thunder, and I'm trying to be better about that.
You're making my job easier.
Well, yeah, but I steal my friend's thunder. I don't want her thunder too. So I don't want to do
There's
that.
no thunder to take.
There's no
is all.
thunder today.
No
Don't worry,
thunder,
we
all
have
lightning.
yeah, all lightning. Don't worry, we have plenty up here well, no, it was yesterday here in Portland, but it was we had thunder. But anyway, so how it started was actually we have to give a big shout out to Savvy Lyser and RK Gold. They actually are two AuthorTube writing stream friends of ours that were co-writing live on stream their own book from inception of the idea all the way through publication of it, the book release party, cover releases, all that stuff. And they were writing a book called Cancel Sean Boston. I believe it is still available on Amazon. And Sean is spelled S-H-A-W-N. It basically was just a take on Savvy does a lot of like investigating MLM type of shady business practices and things of that nature, and just goes through a lot of that. That's like her focus of her channel. And
Multi-level marketing. That's what MLM.
yeah, MLM, multi-level marketing. Yeah, and so they were kind of going through. She had done an expose on someone about cancel culture and all that stuff was really ramped up. And so they decided to write a book about canceling a specific person, like a specific person being canceled. And they were having so much fun. Sako and I were, pretty much in the chats all the time, like chatting back and forth. They were having so much fun just brainstorming it. They were brainstorming with the collaboration of their stream and the comments coming in. So I just, like Sako and I didn't hesitate. I just kind of was like, I want to write a book with you. And I think, our genres were, close enough aligned. She's fantastic at horror. She really can put the macabre and the horror into things. I'm good at more of the mystery angle of things, and I'm good at like the grander, larger meta themes. But more kind of the mysterious angle, and I get more into the nitty-gritty of the horror of humanity, and she gets more into like the horror of like visceral horror.
Necessarily.
Not necessarily, but yeah.
I like to expose the horror of humanity as well. So like that is kind of
yeah. Yeah, I'm
MO.
not saying you don't. Yes. She's just better at when it comes to needing a supernatural visceral horror. She's better at putting that in there. I'm just not. I love it. It's my favorite. But I just can't write it very well.
So let me pause here because I want to ask this question because obviously when someone watches Sako and the Moon, they're learning about how to do essentially how-tos. So let me ask you this: what would be, and I guess you guys can both take turns answer this or answer it together if you want. How would two people who maybe have met somewhere at a networking event or at a con of some sort, how would they determine strengths and weaknesses, or how to weigh in the different parts of the collaboration. Like, how do you pick roles as far as good with this, good with that, these strengths here? How do you guys bridge that conversation?
You know, it kind of we handled it as it came up. So
Yeah.
when it first started, it was, I want to co-write something. And she said, I want to co-write something. And we were like, how about we do this thing together? And it made sense. We got really super lucky. We started out as friends and became, professional colleagues as far as like writers were concerned. And they say don't work with your friends, but I think that's bullshit.
I mean, this show
I
is
do. I agree.
Um,
In the indie community, we can't not
Yeah.
work with our friends.
I mean, yeah, we have to have our groups, our crews, the people that we trust.
Yeah,
That we
our support literally is the entire every other person that's had to write independently and publish independently on their own.
Yeah, because I always try to say that there's always space on the shelf for every book. There's no reason why any of the indie authors need to treat each other like enemies or foes or rivals or competition. There's enough space on the shelf for all of our books.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have a whole shelf dedicated to every indie author that I know personally. Their books are on my shelf.
So I assume that you have space for the Copperweed collection. Thank you.
Thank you. I have collections.
I
don't have every book from everyone, but I have at least one book.
You should have mine.
I have yours.
There you go. Thank you very much. No, but so Sako, you mentioned that you kind of lucky, you guys kind of fell into the things worked out, it was comfortable. BC, if I could ask you then, how would two people who maybe aren't as close, maybe who weren't friends at the beginning, what would be some good tips, maybe like 2 or 3 tips that would help either help them work together or determine that they can work together? Because that's a really good space. Not all 2 authors can just co-write. So what would be some initial maybe questions to ask each other or a conversation to have that would help to establish this at the very beginning of the process?
Yeah, that's actually great. And so it would kind of be 3 tips that I have for each of the points that you brought up. The first one being determining how, like, who do you want to co-write with, kind of a thing.
Right.
That can be one of the bad things I did as an indie author starting out was I made conventions and events where I could network all about me and my books. And it wasn't that I didn't pay attention to other people's books. I celebrated them, I applauded them, I bought their books, I, signed things. But what I didn't do was maintain close contact with them in between conventions and events where we would see each other. At that time was all in person. We weren't doing Zooms and virtuals and stuff like that. It was all in person.
Gotcha.
So that's my recommendation is when you are meeting other writers, whether it's your local writing group or you're going to a convention or you're at a, like a large writing retreat or doing something like that, is to maintain that relationship with them. Pay attention to what's important to them in their lives, because just like we get ideas from our life and what we experience for stories, we can get ideas from somebody else's life just as easily. And if it's a writer, it's like, hey, I want to, I want to do this thing. If you're paying attention and you're maintaining the relationship with them, it's not going to be so weird if you slide into their, into their messenger or their inbox or whatever, and you're like, I really want to co-write something with you. It would be weird otherwise. It seems almost like spammy if you're not maintaining. Yeah, if you're not maintaining that relationship. So that's my first recommendation is know who you chat with, keep their business card, keep their information, and keep contact with them. If you find that you're not a good fit with them over the years, like find a way to like mark that for yourself. I have a spreadsheet that I just like either we didn't get along, our personalities didn't match, or our writing styles don't match. Because I've read their read their work. And through that, you can get a sense of who would be a good fit for you. Two, the second tip I'd probably say for that is, read your other writers' work. Not just one or two items, but try to read them extensively, even if all you have to do is beg for your local library to get them so that you can rent them. And I do that with a lot of my friends' books. If I can't, I can't afford to purchase all of my friends' books. Some of my friends I have one friend who has like 30 books out. I can't afford to purchase all her stuff, and she's aware of that. So, I beg my local libraries to carry her book so that I can rent it from my local library and so other people can. So that's just a fun little marketing tip for everybody to help out your friends. But also, read their work so that you know what it is that they do and how they write and how they drop a sentence. What are their strengths and what are their weaknesses that you view? And you have to have a really analytical eye towards yourself as well during that process, because you have to say, I think I can work, personally, I think I can work with anybody on anything. I'm very amiable. I'm a people pleaser. And I get super excited. Usually my enthusiasm will carry me through a project like no other, even if I don't like the project. So I have to be really honest about, can I actually write with this person rather than do I want to write with them?
Agreed.
Yeah, it's
I'm the same way.
Yeah, it's I may really want to write with, say, for instance, Savvy or RK, but my style and their styles nowhere near each other. Like genres, writing style, it wouldn't be a good fit for just a one-on-one co-writing effort. So that would be kind of where it'd be there. And honesty is the biggest one. That's my number one point for when you do select somebody to co-write with and you both decide that you need to how you're going to tackle it. You have to be honest. If you don't like something that your co-writer has written, you have to say something. Or if you don't like the style in which, or the direction in which a story is going, or the outline is going, or how you're handling something, you just have to be able to say, hey, I think we should go this way with that instead. This feels odd to me, or can we find a way to, I know you like this way, so can we find a way to merge it with what feels less awkward for me to write, or what feels less awkward for me to have my name on?
Right. And there was like one instance, I think, where we deviated from the outline, and the main character, acquired a new power, and we had to kind of like shift things around for the rest of the story in order to encompass this new scene. And she was like, did I do a bad? And I was like, no, we can make this work. Like this like maybe slows us down a little bit, but we can make this happen.
Yeah,
Honesty
and
and
that's
compromise.
honesty. Yeah,
and
the second one being the compromise part of that angle, honesty and compromise. When I came to her with it was one of those. I had the beat right there. I had the outline. I had the beat. I was writing directly under my beat point, and it just was one of those, while you're writing, the scene takes a turn that you did not expect.
Happens.
Yeah, it happens.
So common.
And I knew as soon as I wrote it, as soon as it took that turn and was an official on paper, took that turn, not just in my head, I was like, this could derail our later unless we figure out how to weave it in later. I was like, so I'll get to where this naturally peters out. Let Sako know. And I believe what I said is I while I was writing that beat, kind of came up with something, and I think it's good. I think it works, but it makes us change things. If it doesn't work and you don't like it, I will totally rewrite it, or you can rewrite it. And that's the second
that's where compromise. I think that's where the compromise part comes in.
That's where compromise comes in, which I have to put in my number 2 tip. as being even more compromise on top of the honesty and compromise you had to begin with. So Sako and I have where like we'll just kind of shout out at each other. I really want to write this particular character as many times, as many when they're the focus. I want to write them as much as possible. And or I really want to write this scene because I have a great idea for it. So you have to be able to go back and forth along those and be able to compromise as far as, there have been times I've wanted to write a character or a scene more, but and Sako had wanted to do it, but she's like, you really want to do it. So I'm going to let you have it and vice versa. So I'm just like,
I feel like this book that we're working on right now. So the first book had two main characters. She took one character, I took the other character, and we wrote it out that way. The second book revolves around one character. So we both wanted to write the character.
We're both in love with our main character.
We're both in love with it. So that's something that we're kind of like experimenting with right now.
So that actually leads to what my next question actually was when you have a character, if you're not going to like just pick you do Alex and you do Betty, if you're both writing metaphorical Alex, how do you guys keep the tone the same? How do you guys utilize the consistent voice for the character when you have essentially two different minds writing it?
I would like to take this one. So our process is that, let's say BC starts writing it, and while they're writing, I'm editing. And so we're basically writing in tandem on the same paragraph, right?
As I'm writing, she's editing it. My words.
And vice versa, right? So if I'm writing the character, she will go in and edit my stuff so that the tone is consistent, so that the voice is consistent.
I know that that's really difficult for writers, especially an independent who's just getting into it, not having that experience over time. It is sometimes difficult. I've had this problem of maintaining the same voice for a character over time. Things change for whatever reason. I can imagine how difficult that would be for two people writing the same characters.
Well, the upside is like in storytelling in general, like the character is going to grow, so the voice is going to shift, right?
A little bit.
Sometimes a little bit, depending on the story.
That's true, actually.
Depending on the character arc and how much change the character needs for the sake of the story.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
And these are all writing elements, people. Like these are things that like once you get into writing, you start talking to other authors, they become more clear. You start to hear things about the voice and the tone and character arcs and how the progression of a character should be over a volume. It's one of those really great things about learning from other authors, reading a lot of different works, sometimes works that's different than yours. Go to your local library, keep them open. Please keep your libraries open. And watch people like, I don't know, podcasts on YouTube that talk about writing and independent stuff. Like, I don't know, Sako on the Moon.
Sako on the Moon, kind of, something like that.
Something like that, a little bit of that. Don't get me started. I'll do the Stewie thing for like ever.
That's okay.
So you two, you guys work on. You guys have a project that you already worked on. We mentioned that before. Still available on Amazon under Voit. But you guys are working on something now. And the only reason why I mentioned that, it's not a big secret, because you guys periodically do lives where you guys are actively working on story beats and storylines collaboratively online, like you guys had seen before. And I've watched those streams and I find them incredibly fascinating. Is there anything you want to share about that process? about working together on a project publicly like that?
It helps. I mean, honestly, the first book, Flambeau, which is book 1 in the Hellforged series,
Available now
wasn't
on Amazon.
intended available now on Amazon. Yes, thank you. Yours sounds better. I'll let you do that. It actually, Sako and I didn't plan for it to be a sequel. We didn't plan to have a sequel or a series or anything. We just wanted to write that one book. We had 2 really great main characters and some really strong supporting characters. And at the time, some very specific, for me at least, some very specific social justice issues that I wanted to tackle, specifically at the time, 2020 being, the pandemic. And I had just, lost my friend in the early stages of that. So I wanted to explore that. I wanted to explore, the Black Lives Matter movement going on, and the protests and the riots and everything in between. I wanted to bring awareness.
Draw from real life, of course.
Yeah, draw from real life. And so when Sako and I started, we decided, okay, this we've got this thing we want to go along, this idea, and we want to get the idea. Like doing it live, I thought I was going to be terrified, because there are times I sit, even as an established writer, there are times that I sit and just stare at the screen because I cannot come up with an idea or how to get my main character out of a pinch point, but between my brain, Sako's brain, and everybody streaming with us, we all basically, I want to say our community that streamed live with us and streams live with us now when we're writing, are co-writers as much as we are. Because people will just toss out their 2 cents on, hey, what if you did this with your character? You're struggling here. What if you guys did this? And it's usually perfect for us. It usually is enough to at least get our brains going, if not just used kind of almost outright.
Crowdsourcing our content was super helpful for the first book.
Yeah, and it gave us so much material that we were like, if we went on to do something else, we could use this. This could be a thread to pick up on later, and that's what we did. I write basically for the last, I don't know, what was it, Sako? Probably the last almost 8 months that we were writing the first book and doing the streaming, and we did all the edit. Then we went through the editing, the developmental edits, cover art, release, all that stuff. And we had the release party. I got incredibly sick, and so I was missing streams here and there. I know I was not putting in my share of the editing work and the writing work from time to time. But again, that's being able to talk with my co-writer, being honest about what was going on in my life, being able to compromise, and also Sako's my friend too, on top of that. We both understand what it's like to be sick, or to get sick and have to stop doing something, or to just have to stop doing something because we can't fit it in with the rest of our life.
Life happens.
Life happens, but it worked well. So that's why the first book is published solely under Sako, because I didn't feel right. I dropped out kind of right as we published it, and did the release and everything. I was like, I don't feel right having my name on it and not collecting any and collecting things for it, royalties for it and everything, when I'm not going to be able to help you promote it, and I really haven't been as involved. I knew I had been involved, yes. But I hadn't been as involved as I wanted to be, and I wasn't going to.
Funny, because I feel like BC really pulled out all the stops when it came to writing the third act, and there might have been a little bit of burnout along with the illness, and
Yeah.
I felt like I was carrying a torch. So she was passing me the torch and I was carrying it on for the marketing and stuff like that.
Right.
I did what I could as I could.
And I was aware of what she was going through, both during the third act and also after it. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that was, kind of along those lines. But then the second, when my health started to improve and I got the all okay from, like I could start adding stuff, my doctors and everything, were like, yeah, you could probably add that again. I had been tinkering with, I'd reread Flambeau repeatedly while I was sick. And then I was like, I have a couple of ideas, like the threads that we could pull on or the threads that we could extend for a second
Right.
book. So it was just checking back with Sako to see if she was at a place in her life and her writing life that we could maybe tackle that. I didn't want to tackle it alone. So if
Right.
Sako hadn't been available, I would have shelved. I would have written what I knew and my ideas and my thoughts on it, but then I just would have shelved it. But yeah, so when we started doing the second book, or when I asked about the second book, I was terrified. She was not like she was like not gonna want to do another co-writing project with me. I knew better because we've remained friends.
Mhm.
Sako actually was one of my friends that remained just absolutely with me throughout the whole time that I was just absent from YouTube, absent from Twitch, AuthorTube in general. I just wasn't out there for 2 years. And she kept up with me. We stayed for actual friends. And so when I was like, I really want to come back to this, but I only want to do it with you.
Mhm.
She's like, I have time. She's like, we could
I
do
had
it.
fun, and our developmental editor, Jace Maxwell, he was like, well, you have all these like threads, and if you are doing a sequel, then you don't have to answer them. But if this is going to be a standalone, then you need to answer them. And we were like, well, let's kind of leave it so that there's the possibility of a sequel. And now we're looking back on the comments that he made and the comments that BC made when she reread the book, and maybe I should too. And
Don't worry, I'm almost done notating your copy.
and it kind of like making things fresh on your mind so that all you got to do is continue the story,
So you had mentioned having gone the indie and traditional route before. So when you're working on a collaborative project, do you feel like it's because we know that one of the reasons why people indie publish is because traditional publishing is so meticulous. It's not as simple. It's kind of hard to get in once going for an agent, trying to get a publisher. It's a lot of ness, as it would be. With a collaborative project, is any method do you feel like will be better for 2 or 3 random authors who are getting together to do a collaborative project? Should they lean towards trying to go traditional? Should they lean towards trying to go indie? Is there pros and cons in either direction? What are your thoughts?
There are pros and cons in both directions. So on a personal standpoint, I start every project that I have with the intent for it to be an indie project. Um, every so often, I, I'll get into the project. I have to be most of the way through the project before I think this is something I want to present
Right.
to a house, to even if it's just a small house. As far as like, oh, so traditional publishing, I tried to do for a number of years leading up to my first book, which is probably why I got into such hot water with not hot water, but it was such a horrible experience with my first indie publishing. My first book was because I was frustrated after 4 years of writing, publishing a book, um, doing all the stuff, and then trying to find an agent that was accepting submissions. Um, submitting to them, I tell people I could, or just submitting directly to publishing houses, not going through an agent and hoping, I make it off of the slush pile. Um, I was so frustrated, um, that I ended up just kind of getting into that issue where I was just like, I'll take anybody that will let me put my book in print and put it online. And this was, KDP and stuff like that was, Nook and stuff like that was just starting to be a thing.
Yeah, no one
In
said Nook in a
2007.
while.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm sorry,
That's
it
really
dates
off.
me.
It
Yeah.
dated me. I had to take a step back. I was like, ooh, Nook.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Barnes and Noble. Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
For the
So
young kids who have no idea what they're talking
yeah. So like it was the main thing that I would say is you have to look again if you're going to collaborate and co-write with someone. You have to look again at where have they been publishing, how have they been publishing, are the 2 or 3 people involved predominantly indie, or are they predominantly trad published? Do they go through agents? Do they not? Because that's going to have to all be wrangled. But if it's 2 indies or 3 indies or whatever wanting to tackle, the main thing is getting your structure down, and also your accountability. So Sako and I had to agree on how we outline. She like how many acts I like to outline for is not how many acts she likes to outline for. So
about.
we had to
Here's
kind of
like a
come to
3
a
to
call.
5 battle there.
Yeah, it's like I usually do like a 4-act breakdown. She does more of a 3-act breakdown. It's a 4-act breakdown. It's a 4-act breakdown. But when you structure it out, I see it in, like when we structure it in the thing, it looks like 3 acts. But yeah. So I had to get used to seeing it a different way, kind of a thing. But most of it's you have to make sure your style, your intent on what you want to do with the story is going in the same direction. You just have to be on the same page for, the pun. You have to be on the same page with each other as far as how you're going to publish it and who you're going to work with that works well within those ideas or ideals.
And that goes to like everything that the indies do. I see that in film. Sometimes you work with people in film, and sometimes it's your ideas, their ideas, how you want to approach things, how they want to approach things, don't always line up, and it's just really important to just be honest about how that works. Sako, I wanted to ask you because working together, you and I have worked together on this show, and you two have worked together on one book project, currently another one. Remember, the first one is available on Amazon right now. And what is a positive? We'll stay away from the negatives. What are the positive takeaways? Like, what do you learn from working alongside another author so closely, as opposed to just like reading another author's work? Like, what do you learn in that experience and that process that you wouldn't maybe otherwise wouldn't have learned?
For one, my mystery breadcrumbs are a lot better. 2 positives that I would take away from this experience. We're closer friends for it. 3, my writing style has refined to where I wanted to be. Like I take charge of the first chapter basically, and set the tone and for the rest of the book, set the voice for the rest of the book. And it's a miniature event that is a summary of the rest of the book. So I love writing the first chapter. It is the last thing I do, but when I start writing the story, I just kind of pick a point and just start writing. That'll usually be my second chapter. Or I'll go back and I'll mark it as the first chapter. I'll go back at the end and rewrite the first chapter so that it meets all of these requirements. So learning how to structure chapters was something that I learned in the first book. Learning how to make the breadcrumbs was something that I wanted to learn, and I learned very well from BC. Also, metaplot. I feel like my metaplots were very close, and she was very good at like things that are so big beyond you that you are just a speck in the universe. And so that kind of scale, I'm getting better at.
Random stuff talking to you? Not just
my watch was like looked up scale on me.
Oh, I love it when it just pulls something out on you.
Here's what I found. The four act system, which prevents sagging middle syndrome.
Okay.
That BC taught me that. Yeah, I still call it 1, 2, 3 when I'm outlining. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. It is
1, 2, 2.5, 3.
Yes, 1, 2, 2.5, 3.
Essentially, yeah. That's it.
So the midpoint is like one of the beefiest of the plot points, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So yeah, those would be my takeaway. Would be the breadcrumbs, would be the change in voice, would be the 4-act system. Yeah.
And BC, you touched on a lot of this stuff already, but are there any things that, like, because I do want to make sure we're always providing education here. So is there something that I don't necessarily want to lean into negatives, but things that people should be cautious of when walking into a collaborative project? Like, let's say someone asks them to be a collaborator with something like I know we've touched on some of these already, but what should they look out for to protect themselves?
One is definitely getting to know your person that you're reaching out to for, like, what are they accountable? Do they hold themselves accountable? Do they have like an accountability structure? There are a lot of writers that, and I'm one of them. I'm not a disciplined, structured writer as far as setting myself a schedule and making sure I write, except for, like, I have to do that when I'm co-writing with someone. Sako and I know we're going to be writing, and we can have a little leniency towards each other. You can have that give and take, but you need to make sure that the person that you're writing with is going to be able to actually help you produce what you're wanting to produce. So that's kind of that can be a very pitfall area where you can kind of be blinded by your friendship with another author. Like, everything matches great, but one author is more loosey-goosey with their production and things of that nature, whereas the other is more structured and more deadline oriented. So that's definitely an area. The other pitfall area is the honesty, is being able to be honest with someone, not with someone else, and not be cruel about their writing, and to not be able to to actually just not be jealous of somebody else's writing. Like, I love what Sako can do with some of her writing. And I'm a little envious of what she can do with it because it's like, I was like, I would have never thought to write it like that. That's like cool. Or I never would have thought of that idea. That's just awesome. My brain didn't go there. But, I can look at that and go, that's something I can learn from rather than hold some type of like inward jealousy over or, be envious
Right.
over. So that's part of the honesty. And it's not easy for people to be honest completely with other people and with themselves at the same time. So that can be an area that you really have to be cognizant of, is if you are in the right place to be able to be that honest. Um, and then I would probably say the other pitfallish type areas, just something to watch for. Um, Actually, in this experience, I haven't had too many issues, but in other previous collaborations I've done, not co-writing, but putting together anthology collections and things of that nature, you have to make sure that somebody is kind of in charge of moving things along the line, but not like moving things along, but not railroading it. Like
Yeah.
they have to be loose. They have to be able to pivot a little bit so that you can allow for creativity or so you can allow for additional ideas, which hopefully will make it better. So those would be the areas that I'd say that would be a little gray, just to kind of watch your step during, um, and be really cognizant of it.
I think one of the like my only real thing to add to this entire conversation is this show, for example. As we've always talked about, this show is a product of me and Sako meeting at a convention and then talking after the convention, like you mentioned, becoming friends and getting to know each other and just having really good conversations and saying, you know what, we should do this on air. People should hear us talk shop, and we should do that. And the collaborative process applied just as much as you guys described it to this podcast. And I really bring that up because you're going to see those kind of collaborative projects in not just writing, but in podcasting, in filmmaking, in a lot of these other projects that we creatives find ourselves in the midst of. Could be some collaborative art, could be doing a show together, whether you're a band or an act of some sort musically. And just wanted to remind the audience that these tips, although can obviously be modified for whatever creative space you're in, uh, these are pretty ground rule kind of things. This is ground level stuff that I think would apply to literally any kind of collaborative project you out there might be looking to do. Whether you're looking to start a podcast with your best friend, is your best friend responsible? Like BC was talking about, is one of you going to be responsible for moving the show forward, keeping yourself on track, keeping the show on air on time regularly? Just a tip: I'm not that person on this show. Um, totally not me. I literally just tell her to tell me when to show up, and I'll show and I'll do my thing. And so then we do, and that's kind of how that plays out. But that's going to be base information. The information you guys have given over the last hour has been amazing. And I honestly think that anyone who's watched the show and stuck around can definitely walk into a collaborative project confident, comfortable, and will walk out with a very, very valuable product. And I thank you, BC, for joining us here on this show. Um, is there anything else that you feel like we didn't cover that you might want to throw out there? If not, is there? Do you want to like just tell people how they can get a hold of you and how to find you?
Um, I don't think there's a whole lot more I want to cover. I want to encourage more indies or just writers in general, whether you're going the traditional route or you're going the indie route. I definitely want to encourage more people to attempt co-writing. I mean, just because you bring a project to someone and you work on a project does not mean that project has to finalize, does not mean that a project has to be published. you can get well into a project with another person and realize it's not going to come to fruition. I have full novels that were written based on outlines that it was supposed to be like book 3 or book 4 or book 5 in a series. And book 1 got published, book 2 got published, but book 3 never got published by their writer. So it meant mine either had to be super rewritten or just not go out there. And so a lot of times it was I didn't have the time or the uh, ability to be able to rewrite it. So the project kind of ended right with the other writer that couldn't meet their deadlines. But
Right.
so that kind of should have been more a little better planned out and structured as far as who took point on that particular project. But still, I still got to write something that later, I mean, I've cannibalized that story for so many things, so many aspects, for characters, for themes, for dialogue that was just awesome, that it was worth it in the end. And then on top of that, you get the benefit of, like Sako said, one of the pros of this whole process has been we've gotten a lot closer. And we were, I feel decently close, you know, to begin with just chatting back and forth for the first book. And then with the first book, we got even closer. And then after that, more so. So it was just, you know, it's all around a good experience. As long as you put your work into it first, your diligence into it first, and make sure that you're going to be a good fit for each other for it to be a good experience.
Excellently put. Where can our viewers find you in the interwebs?
In the interwebs, you can pretty much find me at all places. BC Brown Books. That's everything. That's my socials, through my website, through like most of my handles for like anything, pretty much like Discord or anything. So yeah, that's pretty much me. My books are available on Amazon. What is out there right now? I have a few that are out of print that are in rework status for new issues to come out or new editions to come out. But most of my work's available on Amazon and most of the major outlets.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming onto the show and allowing me to conduct this interview, to take a little bit of that heat off Sako and put Sako in a different seat here this episode, instead of being the lead like she typically. I'm sure she's not so upset. Hopefully I did her proud.
I
Sako,
understand. No, thank you. I appreciate it.
no problem. You're welcome to the show absolutely anytime. Sako, is there anything you wanted to throw in? Do you want to like put the hat back on as co-host and throw in anything that we may not have discussed?
I feel like we pretty much discussed all the things that that we had intended on talking about. But if you like this video,
If you like this video /podcast,
you might want to hit the like button.
So you do want to hit the like button. You're going to do it right now.
Right now. Get weird with our buttons down there.
You might want to subscribe and maybe even ring that bell on the off chance that YouTube will actually notify you when we go live. And we will catch you guys on the flip side.
See ya.